In the last few weeks, there's been tensions between China with Taiwan and Japan. We've also seen Russia build up its forces in Belarus with China and North Korea. We've seen protests in Iran. And now the Navy that Trump and Rubio assembled have struck a facility in Venezuela. What do you think led to this, as well as them deploying 1,500 troops?
I've heard, I have no confirmation, the 82nd Airborne has been deployed there, that they've moved more than 100 tanks into Trinidad, which is right off the coast of Venezuela. Um, I've heard that, of course, we've got about a third or more than a third of the entire U.S. military is deployed to the Caribbean. And that's very significant because Russia's engaged in a big buildup in Europe aimed at Poland and the Baltic states and Finland right now. Um, that's NATO. And if the U.S. is concentrated in the Caribbean, it's not able to help there. It's kind of convenient. It's as if Venezuela created a distraction to the U.S. I suspect a lot more U.S. ground forces are tied up down there from things I've heard than what people are saying. It's an if you wanted to contain Venezuela or stop drug smuggling, you wouldn't need to deploy such a large force, even if you were going to defend Trinidad or the islands from aggression from Venezuela, you wouldn't need a force this big. This is a huge force. And it also means that Japan is vulnerable. You just had this Chinese exercise off of Taiwan that caused Japan to send 16 fighters to Taiwan that really caused Taiwan to go into alert. They're testing our ability to respond and they're stretching us out. Now, Iran, right after Christmas, the president of Iran made a statement that Iran was at war with America, Israel, and Europe. Um, I think that he was being pushed to make those statements because Russia and China need a front in the Middle East. They need a threat to the Persian Gulf oil, and they need the Iranians to step up and do it. And the Iranians did that, and their people just bolted. So they've got people, taking to the streets, taking over government buildings. They took over the Western. I heard the report yesterday, but I'm not sure it's confirmed. Western military main Western military base in Iran. Is the regime collapsing? Well, we'll see. It could end up as a civil war. They could just end up slaughtering a lot of people and putting the cap back on. So far, Trump and America, Europe, and Israel is not responding to support the Iranian people. Here, this country's leader said that it's at war with us, and their people go to overthrow them, and we don't support them. When those people have been living under this tyranny since 1979, don't we have a conscience? And these people are doing us a service while they're helping themselves to free themselves. Shouldn't we help them out? It wouldn't cost us much. We had this air campaign. We bombed them, and the Israelis bombed them several months back. Can't we go back to doing that and bomb the Revolutionary Guard Corps headquarters and barracks to prevent them from putting down the uprising? I should hope so. Um, so we're I think it is an effort to pin us down, and we don't react properly. We don't act to get. If we wanted to get out of the situation, we would have invaded Venezuela already and knocked it out and taken the oil and let them simmer in the jungles, arm the Venezuelan people to finish off the communists in the jungles, and just go back to defending Europe and the Western Pacific. But we're not. We're just like we're stuck. Like we don't intend. We intend to have an excuse to not defend Europe and the Pacific.
Mm.
That's what I'm worried about. And we're not doing anything in the Middle East. We could roll up Cuba, Venezuela, and these countries, and we could roll them all up and be redeployed into Europe before the Russians finish their deployment to invade Europe. And before the Chinese can actually get their offensive going. The Chinese are doing these drills, they call them mobilization drills or whatever. I think it's something like that. How many troops, new troops, are the Chinese raising? We know the Russians, Putin announced just before New Year's here that he was going to mobilize 260,000 additional Russian troops. Then they've got foreign mercenaries pouring into the country. At this rate, he's going to have 1.5 million. He's going to have as many troops as he has now. He's going to have 3 million men under arms in his ground forces. Europe can't stop that, and Ukraine won't be able to either when it comes right down to it.
And we'll get into all of that, but as far as the Navy striking Venezuela first, do you think this had anything to do with weapons that, when we last spoke, I believe you said had been smuggled?
I didn't say smuggled. No, I said that kitchen missiles. Lee Wheelbarger, Johnny and I were looking at satellite photographs of Cuba, and near a major airfield in Cuba, we found kitchen missiles. Those are the missiles that can go Mach 4.6 that could split an aircraft carrier in half. And there were like, I forget, 22 of them, 18 of them. There was some large number of them sitting off this airfield. So, and they need a Russian Su-22M bomber to deliver them. Well, they might have those bombers in bunkers down there because they've got things in bunkers that they could have brought the bombers in pieces and assembled them there. So they could be able to strike the CVN 75, is it? The USS Gerald Ford. This is a very serious threat. And our leadership seems a little bit, we should be, with Russia attacking, openly threatening war and attacking Ukraine in violation of its treaty. We should invoke the Monroe Doctrine and say, there's no Russian troops or advisors in the Western Hemisphere. Get out. You have 72 hours to get out, and we're taking these countries back. We're not allowing you to have tyranny of these people here. Because now they're building missile sites and they're threatening. They could threaten our Gulf Coast commerce. They could paralyze our commerce from these bases. I mean, people say that we're surrounding Russia. No, they've been surrounding us. They're in Mexico. The Chinese have been infiltrating Canada. Read the Sidewinder report. People are just ignorant about what the Chinese and Russians, the aggressive moves they're making. Chinese owning farmland near our strategic bases here in the U.S. What are they doing on that farmland? This has been documented. Why hasn't the government squashed all that immediately? Certain state governments have. Why hasn't the federal government acted on this? There is something rotten in the state of Denmark.
And we'll get on to all of those conflicts in a second, but as far as why the Navy struck when it did, do you think it was because they just didn't want to sit out waiting forever and decided to take out this facility because they didn't want to sit out there forever waiting for Maduro to do something?
Well, it looks like they are going to sit out there forever, but they're being tied down. And why? On the claim that they're going to stop drug trafficking. Well, most of the drugs are entering the country through the Mexican border or directly through American ports or across from Canada. So Venezuela is a player in the international drug thing. Don't get me wrong. FARC is. The narcos are all aligned with the communists in the Western Hemisphere. You read Joe Douglas's book, Red Cocaine. You can find a PDF of it online. He was documenting in the late 80s how Russia and China were controlling these major drug cartels, how they had trained people in the drug business, how they were using organized crime and drug trafficking and money laundering to get control of Western elites and Western financial elites by compromising them. Because once the laundering of the money, the drug money is significant because who's on the take from that money and what left wing or right wing controlled by Moscow causes are being financed by that black money that's been laundered. You look at what George Soros has done. Why is the Soros Fund founded in the Netherlands and Chile about the time that cocaine money laundering was beginning? It's just a question. Is there a connection? I'm not saying there is, but is there? George Soros funds the left, funds all these Antifas and these other crazy leftist groups. I don't trust George Soros. I think George Soros, he pretends to be against Russia, but I'm not sure he really is. He comes out of the Soviet bloc. That's who he collaborated with. before he found his way. They just don't let anybody out of that cage to come west. And then he comes west and he gets a fancy degree and he's able to do an attack on the British pound. Really? How does some simple person coming out of Eastern Europe, some immigrant out of Eastern Europe, how was he enabled to do all that? Did he have help? I mean, I'm asking obvious questions here, but I haven't never heard anybody ask that. They just say, "Oh, they rack him up. It's capitalism is doing all this, and he's a capitalist," and so they blame capitalism, not communism. Um, Capitalism is about as helpless as an infant. Taking things from the capitalists is like taking candy from a baby. We see it all over again. You read Joseph Finder's book on what the Soviets did in the 1920s, getting all these, getting the Rockefellers and shoot the Harriman fortune to invest and other capitalists to invest in Soviet Russia, thinking that Soviet Russia was going to liberalize, and they all lost their money. Standard Oil, they built the Soviet oil infrastructure and then it was expropriated. They lost everything. You'd think they'd learn, but they never do because capitalism isn't managed. Most of the big corporations aren't managed by the entrepreneurs who, through their smarts, built them. It's handed over to, uh, you know, third-rate people who are managers who could never have created these great companies, but currently manage them. An entrepreneur is not a manager.